Hello and welcome to Newsclick. Today we have with us Professor Wen. He is from the Renmin University in China and also teaches part-time at other universities as well. Professor Wen is well known for his work on rural reconstruction in China, both academically and in terms of the movement for rural reconstruction. Welcome, Professor Wen.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Let me begin by asking you, you have expounded in your writings considerably about the transitions that China has made from a largely rural and agrarian economy to an industrial society today. And what you describe as the high costs that this has imposed on Chinese society in the course of this transition. Could you tell our viewers a little bit more about this?
Most of these developing countries all have one thing is very similar, that they all aiming to set up industry. It's because of they were defeated by this industrialized country during the colonized area, this period. Since the 17th, 18th, 19th, these 3 centuries, most of these poor countries is invaded by so-called industrialization. They have a very strong war shape, and then began to beat up these agrarian countries. And then agrarian countries, they don't have industry, they always lose. So that is why in these 100 years in China modern history, no matter whatever the party, you belong to which party, even the dynasty or different leadership, they all aiming industrialization. But the difference is developing country cannot exploit from overseas. They only can exploit it themselves. So the urban industrial setup in the urban, so the urban industry exploited or take too much surplus from the agricultural area, from the peasants, from the rural society. That is a very big cost inside. It means that the rural people, they got to contribute, and then also they need to accept this the industrial cost from the city to the rural area. Very famous, you may know that in China we have several times to move the young people from city to the countryside. It's because of every time the urban industry have the crisis. The people cannot have the work, they are unemployed. I mean, when they lay off, where they gone?
So you have to go back to the rural area.
Go back to the rural area. So if they stay in the urban area, there must be big social chaos.
Sure.
Because in China, whenever the urban industry have the crisis, there must be many millions workers lay off.
Sure.
Much bigger than any European countries or other Western countries.
Sure.
You cannot imagine the first big crisis happened in 1960s. There are almost 70 to 80 million city workers have no job. And where they gone? They only can go to the countryside and then separated in millions of small villages, and then they at least can have a little bit of food. Some of them have no food and then die in hunger.
Sure.
So that is when the developing country cannot transfer out their cost, they only can transfer the cost
within the
inside.
population.
That is why I said every country, if you want to set up your industry, you need to first to pass the primitive accumulation of the industrial capital. And then any industry is a capital intensive development. It's not labor intensive. So by such kind of very objective historical experiences, the rural China take too much burden, too much cost from the urban industry. So after that, after half century, even longer, China set up the biggest industry in the world, but it still need the rural take the industrial cost and then maintain the industrial to compete in the so-called global competition.
In today's context, as you well know, both in the National Congress debates as well as the debates in the party congresses, it has been repeatedly noted and sought to be addressed as a problem, this growing disparity between the rural and urban areas and between the developed regions and the less developed regions.
Yes.
This is also, I presume, part of this problem that you are talking about.
It's not only in the parliamentary or in this political bureau, whatever. It's at least not only in the high levels policy makers, but also in the society. A lot of intellectuals and the social groups, they join the discussion how China reduce the gap between rural and urban. You know, the rural is lower and the urban is higher, and maybe that if you calculate all of these social expenditures into the income gap, the urban income is 4 times to 6 times higher than the rural income. That is just one data, but there are so many things.
Sure.
So caused by 1997 East Asian financial turmoil, and then 1998, there is a very, very important thing happened. That is overproduction. You know that in all of these Western countries, when the overproduction taking place, followed by big war, not only depression, but also the Second World War, caused all related of the Western countries' overproduction. Means that you have a big industrial capacity, but nowhere to use. But in China, okay, when China have such kind of similar problem in late 1990s, fortunately, it's the chance for this central governments to turn this big industrial capacity into the gap. How to reduce the gap problem, especially in countryside. So since 1998, the Chinese changed the strategy. The first one is Western China development.
Yes.
The total amount of investments is 3.6 trillion Chinese yuan. It's you can
Sure.
Yeah, you can calculate how much.
Sure.
But it's almost $500 billion.
That's right. And to put it in perspective, the contrast between the GDP in Eastern China compared to Western China is also like this in the ratio of 6 to 1, 7 to 1.
Yeah, and then the second one is 2001. 2001, they have a new strategy to regenerate the Northeast China, that is an old industrial base, but run out. And then more than 2 trillion. And then 2003, that is for the Made China rising, because Made China still be very poor, and that is regional gap. The first is West, second is Northeast, third one is Made China. And then from the 2005, the new strategy, special focus on the countryside. So it's a new countryside construction. That's the biggest one. Nowadays, from 2005 to this year, 2013, the total amount of the central governments, provincial governments, 2 levels governments invest into the countryside infrastructure construction and social construction is 7 trillion. Yes. It's almost $1.2 trillion. That's right. It's the biggest. It means that originally you use the half century for building up your industry, you take too much from the countryside.
And now
you turn back. So turn back is 7 trillion Chinese yuan, but it's every year annually increments, it's 15%. Yes. It means that nowadays the countryside investments is the big item of the total budget of the central government.
Sure. And this investment is going in what?
Infrastructure construction. Nowadays, more than 98% of the village by 5 communication. The first is the road, electricity, water, telephone, internet. So that is industrial park, you need
Yes.
fiber communication. Now the governments built up fiber communication into the village. You know that we have more than 600,000 administrative village.
Yes.
Nowadays, 98, 99% of the village have such kind of facilities. Means that the infrastructure construction very much improved. And then, meanwhile, it's social construction. Means that farmers, the peasants' family, the children, free education, no pay, even the food.
Sure.
And then the people go to the hospital. You have a health care system. You personally pay 20%, and the other 80% paid by the government.
Yes.
And then they not only individual, you paid by the village.
Yeah.
The village as a package. And then, a lot of young people go out. Means that 6% of the villagers can have 100% of the village population's medical care.
Sure.
That is much benefits to local people.
Sure.
So by this infrastructure construction and social construction, now the gap smaller and smaller. So, but still be bigger. I think that if we need, but anyway, annually increments is 15%. So, yeah.
So, from what I've read of your writings, you have posed that this transition that China is now going through is posing some major challenges in China, as well as in the construction of the industrial society in China. And two of the challenges you have repeatedly spoken about is of the costs borne by rural society
Yeah.
and by the environment,
Yeah.
for which this new concept of the ecological civilization
Sure.
has been put forward. So how are these problems viewed and how are they being tackled in China?
It's a very important. I think that the question is also very complicated.
Yes.
The first, the people should know that China is very much short of the natural resources.
Yes.
We only have 6.4 water resources of the world wide, and then 7% of the arable land, but must feed 20% of population. So means that if we just gain the world average, 2/3 of people cannot.
That's right.
Yeah. So that is the problem. So if that you want to invest into agriculture, the mainstream mainly focus on the yield. How much is the total amount of the products of agriculture? Can we feed? Can we just supply at least 20% of population needs? That is a big issue. But I don't think that is only one. But also, when you set up the perfect industrial structure, a lot of industrial group, they produce chemical.
Yes.
Not only the fertilizer, but also poisons, whatever. And then they all benefits from the agriculture. And can you stop them? So one side you need to have a more yield. Another side you need to give the interest, the benefits to the industrial group. It's an interest group. Means that by at least two sectors, they mix together. So it's not easy to change the agriculture situation. So agriculture became, we said, it's two kinds of the negative externalities. One is that you can not just improve the environment and the resources, natural resources, very, very much, much more exploited by such kind of needs. And another side is food safety is to be very big issue. So that's also when you mobilize a lot of young people move to the cities, to the urban areas, and then the rural society almost be, troubled.
Yeah.
And old people, and the kids and women left in the villages, and the young people, especially male, move out, and 30%, even more than 30%, and then the agricultural labor became more and more older So it's almost 50 years old or 60 years old people, they're working in the field. So many things happen. So that is why we have done something as in name of social movements.
Yes.
And we have the very special programs in countryside in name of rural reconstruction.
That's right.